Hi everyone, this is Jamie Starr with the New World News Network. Tonight I'm going to do two quick little videos, maybe a third if I can remember what the third I wanted to do was. But this first one is a video I found of David Knight of Infowars running into Webster Tarpley, who is protesting Donald Trump. And I think, especially lately, with a lot of the conversations I've been having, I feel, especially thanks to Ben Shapiro and his lectures about how to talk to leftists, or noticing their argument tactics and the diversions and everything like that, I find it a lot easy to just cut through the bullshit when you see videos like this. And Webster Tarpley was someone who I had originally respected. I had seen him in a handful of documentaries, and when it comes to history, he definitely seems to know what he's talking about. But he obviously assumes the worst about everyone all the time, except himself. There's a narcissism that just permeates through him, and as you can see on the title, it says spouts leftist talking points. He obviously is a leftist to some extent. I remember when Ron Paul was running, though, and Ron Paul came out and said that he was just basically going to end all government entitlements and everything. And Webster Tarpley came out and said what Ron Paul is talking about is genocide. Because if you cut off food stamps because there's 20 million or 60 million or however many million of people receiving food stamps, that they would all just end up dying of starvation in the streets. And if you've seen my other video, Fascism and Nazism in America, you can see how the government has stopped people from feeding the homeless and the hungry out in parks. They make it illegal, so you can't feed anyone unless if it's sanctioned by them. So, I mean, it's so mind-boggling to me, because it's like, alright, you have the government robbing everyone at gunpoint and saying, we're taking your money and you should fucking feel good about it because we're going to feed all the homeless and the hungry. And yet Webster Tarpley thinks if the government is not there with a gun at everyone's head, that they're not going to feed one another. Like, it's so crazy, because it is an assuming the worst of everyone, but assuming that government, which is a construct existing of people, is going to be completely altruistic. When he's a historian, he should know government does far worse atrocities compared to actual people. So let's get into the video.
David Knight, Infowars.com. I'm standing here at the AIPAC convention. And of course, Donald Trump and some of the other presidential candidates are speaking here tonight. It was reported by Gateway Pundit, and it was carried on Drudge as a red link story, that there were hundreds, perhaps thousands of anti-Trump protesters. And I'm cutting this report to tell you we have been here the entire time. That report is absolutely false. There are not hundreds of protesters. This core of protesters over here that you see here right now, those were the people that were here the entire time. Now, when you show pictures of the protest, what you saw were literally several thousand people, about 15,000 people were going to AIPAC convention, and they were lined up and processed and going through. They were dressed in suits and ties and yarmulkes, okay? This is the small group over here in this corner that everybody was having to file past. That's the number of protesters, and of course people standing there like us taking pictures of them, but they always overstate their presence. Okay, there were not 1,000 protesters here. There were not hundreds of protesters, perhaps 100 protesters at the peak. And this is about what the peak looked like, is right here. As we walked around that crowd, in the crowd, around the crowd, in both directions, and I'm telling you, that's the core protesters. They're still there. That's the number of protesters that showed up at this event. And it is not a Trump rally. This is an AIPAC event where Trump is speaking along with other presidential candidates. Now, you can see the Hitler symbolism. Here's one picture right here where somebody's done Hitler, Nazi as a sign of Hitler. And then there's this Trump equals a Nazi sign. Let's go over here and see who this is. Let's take a look at this. Excuse me. Do you think this is very helpful at AIPAC convention to put this sign up?
We're at a point. We're at a historical tipping point, buddy.
Yeah?
We got to tell it like it is.
Okay. So you think Trump is a Nazi? You think this gets your message? You do? You do? Okay.
He's Nazi.
Yeah.
He has violence at his
You
rallies.
compare him to the Hitler of 1929. You compare him to the Mussolini of 1920.
You don't think that's an overstatement?
No, I'm a historian. I know what I'm talking about. There are multiple points.
And you're Webster Tarpley, right?
Webster Tarpley, that's it.
We've got Webster Tarpley here.
Right.
Webster Tarpley thinks that Donald Trump is a Nazi.
Absolutely a Nazi. And
You wanna back that up beyond Goodwin?
I'm appalled to see libertarians who are supposed to be the opposite of authoritarian, totalitarian, all trooping like lemmings into this Trump conveyance. Let's talk about some
Years ago,
stuff.
people who called themselves libertarians never would have supported Donald Trump.
Now, as this goes on, I want to address this just right now. As it goes on, the first thing that one of Webster Tarpley's rebuttal points is, you're playing word games, you're playing word games. You'll see it in a minute. And I want to point this out just because it keeps getting said over and over. Calling Donald Trump a Nazi is a word game. Because the Nazis were the National Socialist German Workers' Party. It was a socialist group. So to call Trump a socialist when there's an actual socialist running on the Democratic candidate, socialism is on the left of the political spectrum, it really makes no sense. And it just shows how a lot of words, like we're in this Orwellian state where a lot of words don't mean what they mean. It's, calling someone a Nazi just means you're a big, mean, bad man. Like, it's just this label for, like, villain. Like, but it has a, kind of context to it that people will twist with it. And we're going to see that. But I wanted to point that out so that everyone's aware when Tarpley throws out that accusation, you're playing word games. The whole premise of his point is a fucking word game where he's using these labels and taking them out of historical context and, projecting them onto Trump and loosely trying to tie it together. I've tried to tell people this over and over, and no one wants to hear it because, again, they don't know the actual history. But, I can Google it real quick. Watch. Jews declare war on Germany. It's not hard shit to find, but in Germany, in the 20s, here, Judea declares war on Germany. Jews of all the world unite in action. The Jews were the 1%. They held all the positions of power in banking, in the media, in politics. So they are so much more akin to the 1%, Bernie Sanders' enemy, and trying to uplift the people against those who are in power. It's the same thing, and no one seems to see that you still have a socialist going on these tirades against whoever has the most influence, but instead people get lost in this sort of identity politics end of it, where they think Trump, making comments about Muslims is more like Hitler because, Hitler going after the Jews. The context is irrelevant. They just see it as someone declaring a political identity as the problem, not the actions of the people who, and it's so funny because it's what they do with white people all the time, where it's like, you're not just looking at these people and saying, all right, well, this one's doing some bad shit, this one's doing some bad shit, this one's doing some bad shit. You're just going, white people are bad, Jews are bad, Muslims are bad. And it's such a broad brush and a fucking crazy way to look at things. So,
Over the last,
do you think,
at least from my experience.
Oh, the other thing is, as far as the identity politics, you're also going to see Tarpley do this, where he will try to pigeonhole David Knight and be like, you're a libertarian. I'm surprised you're supporting this, because in his head, it's part of the education problem. Libertarian equals check A, B, C, D, and there's a list. So, and that's how the people do these things, where they'll build these straw men. They'll put you in one of these categories and then start picking apart the categories. They don't care what you're saying. They'll just be like, oh, well, if you say you're a libertarian, then you're supposed to believe this, and you're wrong in believing that, and you're supposed to think this, and you're wrong for thinking this. It is this build the straw man, attack the straw man. Build the straw man, attack the straw man. So let's watch it.
Do you understand what's going on with globalism? Do you see the open borders and the multinational companies?
I used to work with the libertarians. And the libertarians I used to work with never, ever would have endorsed Donald Trump. I'm not working with the libertarians anymore.
So who do you work with?
Webster.
Okay.
Yes.
You notice that? I used to work with libertarians, and the libertarians I worked with never would have endorsed Donald Trump. But I don't work with them anymore. So why? What's wrong with them? I thought they're not endorsing Donald Trump. I thought they weren't like, this guy makes no sense. He's just so...
Now, why is he a Nazi? Why is he a Nazi? 12 million deportations. That's a police state right away. That's the knock on the door in the middle of the night. Women and children dragged out of the door.
What if somebody comes into your home?
Now, that's his assumption on how it's going to be carried out. Because I look at it like this. You could do it very casually. A lot of these immigrants apply for food stamps, schooling. You know, you could do it as the data comes in. You don't have to be proactively bounty hunters hunting them down. And I mean, do the police do that every time someone gets a warrant? Are they like launching a manhunt for it? No. I know people who have warrants and they've had them for years at this rate. And trust me, the police will catch up with them, and when they do, they're going to say, oh, we've been looking for you. But they're not really looking for them. They know where they are. They could just pull it up on Google. They don't give a shit, though. It could be done very casually. And as David Knight is going to point out, to some extent, all you got to do is let it be known that it's going to happen. And the smart people of the groups, rather than thinking, oh, well, I better, avoid the federales and, duck and cover, they think, oh, well, I can't have a stable life here. Maybe I should just move back to wherever I came from, or go to Canada or somewhere else. I mean, you don't have to round them all up one by one. Some of them will just get the point, they'll be on their way. This taking things to the worst possible assumption, and then you're going to see in a point he does give the benefit of the doubt to others.
Home and doesn't leave. Do you call the police? Do you call the police with that? That's not my libertarian word game. I'm quoting a Cuban mayor from Florida. He says to his wife,
"It's supposed to be against a police state. Get ready to see the biggest police state that you've ever seen. 12 million deportations means holding cells made out of stadiums, cattle cars out of this country." I don't know what you guys, this is what you
well, they could all...
Because, again, she's imagining this, and notice how you're supposed to be this. This is what's going to happen in my Candyland imagination that I'm the mayor of.
Always go home, couldn't they?
Look, let's live in the real world.
That's so funny. He goes, they could just go home, couldn't they? Look, let's live in the real world. They could just go home. That's as real world as it gets. But in his mind, real world is fucking massive police states rounding people up, soccer stadiums as holding cells. I mean, it's so crazy where it's like the common sense shit is dismissed, and it's like, no, let's go to the real world. Terror.
Stop with the
I do live in the real world.
Zero tolerance for your word games. 12 minutes.
Again, the word games, and these are the guys just, having a fucking field day with this mischaracterizations and crazy presumptions and paranoid and like...
It's not a word game. If people come here illegally...
Forget illegal. The whole country is illegal.
There's another word game right there. Forget illegals. The whole country is illegal. What do you mean by that? What is exactly, like, what am I doing that's illegal? Am I here illegally? Like, I don't think so. Like, and I've said before, you want to end all this immigration shit and citizenship. If you understand citizenship, maritime admiralty laws, UCC, and all that stuff, ending citizenship seems like a far, far better idea. But again, it's so crazy for, oh, your word games illegal. Everything's illegal. Like, what in the fuck?
The government is based on assassinations. You know this better than anybody. Why start with...
The government is based on assassinations. Again, I can see that to a point. But it's so funny, though, because you have this candidate that's doing really well, and the Republican Party is like, no, we can't even have it. We're going to fucking cut these primaries off. We're just going to give you Paul Ryan or someone else. And they're on the news being like, so why do we hold the primaries? Why do we let the people vote? And they're replying being like, I don't know. I don't even know why we do, because we select it. It's not whoever they think they're voting for. We just kind of let them feel involved. So, you know, and then you have the New York Times calling for Donald Trump's assassination. People are saying all the time that he should be assassinated. So it's so funny for Webster Tarpley to say that the government depends on or survives on or is built upon assassinations, and the person he's protesting is the one that people are pushing to have assassinated. Like, the disconnect is mind-boggling. I mean, I can't think besides Kennedy who else has been assassinated. So, I mean, we took out Gaddafi, Hussein, you know, and a handful of other bad guys on the other side of the world, but the American government's supposed to be based out of elections, not assassinations. I mean, unless if we want to try some Hunger Games shit where, I mean, we could fucking build a giant dome and throw in some deadly animals like lions and tigers and bears and shit and just put Hillary, Bernie Sanders, and Donald Trump in there, and I bet you Donald Trump will still be the one to come out. Like, it's
the most defenseless people because they're being scapegoated, a la Hitler. Hitler says there's a depression.
And there's where he's wrong. Because, again, the Jews held all the influence and power. They were not little defenseless people.
Depression. Who's responsible for the depression? Is it the Wall Street bankers? No, says Donald Trump. It's those wetbacks.
Well, I think he has blamed it on the Wall Street bankers and NAFTA and TPP.
He is not lifting a finger against them.
Trump wants
Well, he hasn't done.
It's cherry picking.
Done anything because he's not president yet, but he's talked about TPP.
What he's done is lie and flip-flop just about anything.
Here's one of the things that bother me, because I understand when people have core principle values, and, you know, you really shouldn't change your core principle values, like murder is wrong. You know, I used to be for abortion. Now I'm against abortion. So I flip-flopped on abortion, but I think I'm at a more moral stance with it. And that's the thing, where, you know, there's some of this, where when people talk about flip-flopping, like it's a bad thing, and it really isn't a bad thing. It could be a very good thing. I used to be a liberal, and now I'm a conservative, and I feel a lot more morally justified in being a conservative. I don't give much of a shit about what other people think about me. I know what my values are. I know where those values come from. I know there are reasons for it. I'm not in a popularity contest. I don't need other people reaffirming, oh, this is the right thing. You know, I don't have the self-righteousness. I'm just cool by myself, doing my own thing, not infringing on anyone else's shit. I don't care what anyone else does with their lives. I mean, in that term, I'm very socially liberal, but in every other aspect, I'm conservative. And for people to talk about flip-flopping like it's a bad thing, that's like saying, you know, evolving as a person and growing and changing is awful. You should be the same all the time. You should be stuck in these dogmatic, political, religious cults. And that's what it's turned into. And you can even see it at the end of this.
He says, you can't believe. Here's what we do know. He wants riots. If he does...
Now, again, think about how funny this is for him trying to say David Knight's playing word games. He just goes and says, you can't believe anything he says. But here's what we do know. So it's like, how do we know this if we can't believe anything he says? Oh, because you're translating it. You're doing the liberal Jedi mind trick where you're the only one smart enough to decipher the code. Let's see.
He doesn't get the nomination given to him on a silver platter. He wants to have riots. Now, you know...
I think that's a mischaracterization. You're talking about playing word games. That's a mischaracterization.
Yeah, and here's the whole thing. If they steal the election from him after the, populist uprising behind him, there probably will be riots. But it's going to be riots directed at the Republicans and at the system. And it's not good, like, Trump's going to be like, burn down the cities, and everyone's going to hop to it. People are going to be mad because the election is being stolen from them in front of their faces. And Tarpley doesn't give a shit about that. He doesn't care if they're stealing the election. As long as it's not Trump, he's cool with it. All the shady business of politics is cool by him.
If you don't get the absolute majority on the first ballot, you go to the second ballot, and the third, and the fourth. And what he's saying is, no, 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 no. The whole course of American history is not good enough for His Highness Donald Trump. He says, I want the nomination after the first ballot, even if I don't get the absolute majority. So a minority candidate is going to get the nomination. Ridiculous.
Let me ask you, have you ever seen a situation where you got the RNC head, chair, and the delegate saying, we're going to hand it to somebody who didn't even run?
I don't. Well, cross that bridge when we come to it. Anyway.
No, cross that bridge when we come to it. I mean, see how that benefit of the doubt just sort of, because again, these ideas, because they're all in Candyland, they're all fucking these presumptions and everything like that. Occasionally, someone will have a linchpin, or it's like pulling a grenade, where it's like, if the thing were to actually go and it clicks in their head, then everything else crumbles. It's like identity politics. The moment you try to educate someone on Marxism, they start to crumble. They get very defensive and just start, and that's why immediately, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm only cool with this hypothetical gloom and doom, riots, murder, roundups, whatever. Trump can't be justified in anything. If anything goes wrong, there's no justification for any of that. He's a bad, evil man, Nazi, whatever. And there's, if people riot, it's because he told them to. It's not because the elections are being stolen. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
I think that's what he was talking about.
I'm not a Republican. I have never stooped so low and so much degradation to be a Republican. I'm not going to do it. Let's get back to it, though. He says riots, and then he says over the weekend in Arizona, Second Amendment. He's going to win big with the Second Amendment. So we take riots and Second Amendment, I think it's got to do with guns, am I right? And put that together. So he's talking armed riots. I
think that's a bit of a stretch. I think what he's
obviously a bit of a stretch. I mean, look at even if we were to not, what difference would it be from when the Black Panthers would hold their marches and have guns out? Clive and Bundy, the Oregon thing, whatever. I mean, again, this is him just assuming the worst. Like, the word Second Amendment gets mentioned, and then this gets mentioned, and he's like, boom, riots and guns and everywhere. Like, paranoid. Someone needs to get Webster Tarpley some Xanax.
The thing is that people would riot if the RNC puts in somebody that hasn't even participated in the process. Somebody like Romney or somebody like Paul Ryan.
Some studies of fascist blackmail and fascist innuendo, and you'll get the idea.
Read some studies on fascist innuendo. See, there it is, where again he is attributing this to words that don't mean what they originally mean in the context, and then saying there's a secret code being spoken, and even the people who are following him don't know it. They're just blindly following, but I know the code. And again, think about how crazy that is, though, for him to be saying, this is how it's going to end up. It's innuendos. I know the code. I'm deciphering it, and it's bad and evil. But the people who are following it and acting upon it don't know the code somehow, but they're still acting upon it? Like, again, that doesn't add up. This is all narcissism, and it's the evil of education, because you can see where he's like, oh, well, this happened in Italy over here, so it must be similar to that. This must be similar to that. It's a kind of a connecting the dots with irrelevant things and trying to rationalize it all. Like, this is, again, a sort of Marxist thing that I see go on, where if you're like, you know, why do things suck for minorities? They'll be like, well, 100 years ago. And it's like, what does 100 years ago have to do with now? Like, I guarantee you 100 years ago they were not thinking about fucking jetpacks and cell phones and the internet and, like, the day and age we live in. Like, it's completely irrelevant.
He wants to abolish the First Amendment. He says he wants to expand the libel laws so that he can sue people and get lots of money if they dare to insult him.
You know, and this is one of the things where there are things that come out of Trump's mouth that I think are highly questionable. Remarks about torture, remarks about the NSA. I'm not 100% sure on this, but we do have the libel laws. You know, you don't have complete free speech. You can't yell fire in a theater. But I mean, I have to say, if I was out on stage every night talking to people and everything like that, and then I had schmucks like this portraying me as a Nazi and as Hitler, and I mean, you know, the articles where they're trying to make his dad seem like a KKK member and everything like that, I would do whatever the fuck I could to shut these people down and to let them know that you just can't come out on TV saying whatever you want about people and fucking loosely pulling at straws to, like, tie together your point. I would definitely be trying to stop shit like that. And I mean, so maybe that's why Tarpley is so fucking worried and got his panties in such a bunch, because he knows that there's going to be a defense against stuff like that.
He says that
Infowars
wages...
against the First Amendment? Is Infowars
No.
has always said that they were against the NSA and the police state?
Absolutely. Look.
Donald Trump,
Wait a minute.
Trump not said
Yeah.
that he wants to increase the surveillance state? Has he not said that?
Yes, he has, and we have also.
Look at how her eyes get all bugged out as she... Let's bring this back a second. Because she's like, I'm having my gotcha moment. Like, I caught you.
Absolutely. Look.
Donald Trump,
Wait a minute.
Trump not said that he wants to increase the surveillance state? Has he not said that?
Yes, he has, and we have also said we oppose him on
How
that.
could you guys sell out to that? How
That's
could you
not-
shilling for him.
Infowars
You're
is
shilling for
selling
him
out,
at every
shilling
turn.
for him.
Come on.
No.
Look.
And you know, it's so funny because, like, they all give very honest reports on it. Jakari Jackson all the time says, I don't really support Trump. I mean, even David Knight has said over and over for months, he said, I don't really support Trump. And then since he's come out and he's like, well, I support his stance on this, I support his stance on this, but there's a lot of it that I'm still like, eh. And these people can't handle that. They can't handle honest, you know, I agree with this point, I agree with that point, but not that. Because you're going to see what's about to happen. Where, and I'll just let it play and then continue.
It's not.
You're being conned.
Do you
You're
understand?
being conned.
Do you understand what's going on with TPP, with TTIP? Do you understand
we
that's
are
the
for-
critical path
we
for
are for-
globalism?
yeah, listen.
Do you understand that?
We want a
Okay.
15% protective tariff.
Yeah.
The Tax Wall Street Party demands a 15% protective tariff.
Well, he wants a higher protective
No,
tariff.
he wants to use
He
it
wants
as a
to
weapon.
use that as a
He
threat,
wants to use
but
it as a
not
weapon
really have it.
in business negotiations.
You notice how, again, here's the word game. They want the same thing. Trump wants a higher amount. They want a lower amount. So Trump does it. They can't agree on it because, Trump is an evil, mean Nazi. So they can't even say, well, yeah, we both want this. There's a common ground. So they then have to go and say, he wants it as a weapon. It's not a weapon when they have it. When they have it, it's warm and loving and sensible and fair and equal and whatever. But if he wants it, it's a weapon. It's dangerous. It's used to attack people and kill them.
So he can say there's Nabisco and crap. And there's
Yeah, but I think you're arguing semantics. I don't think you're giving him credit for the thing that the Republicans are criticizing him for is protectionism, and he's with you on that issue.
So to create his own monopolies. You're being conned.
So your party is what?
Tax Wall Street Party. A couple of other points. Trump says wages are too high. Wages are too high? That the minimum wage is a bad thing?
Minimum wage is a bad thing.
Are we nuts? Then he'll...
This is where he exposes himself as a complete leftist.
Also says he's willing to tolerate unions, but he doesn't want them to expand.
Don't be a dupe for Trump.
He doesn't. He's willing to tolerate them where they exist, but otherwise he's going to use the Taft-Hartley Slave Labor Act and prevent people from creating unions. So his tax reform, it goes down. The top rate goes down from 40 to 25%. Is a bonanza for the top 1/10%.
Did you agree with or oppose the Reagan tax cut?
Huh?
Do you agree with the Reagan tax? Because he lowered tax.
Disaster. They were a disaster because...
Okay, then we have a disagreement on that.
Here's what he did. He ballooned the deficit, and then he turned around and raised the Social Security payroll tax to take that out of the hide of wage earners. So what he did was a massive redistribution of wealth from the middle and the lower to the upper. That's Reagan in a nutshell. Complete fraud.
Yeah, I agree that lowering taxes and increasing spending was a formula for disaster. I think that I'm on the side of lowering taxes, though. And you disagree. Yeah, but you disagree with lowering the taxes?
The anti-establishment. When did you guys become such acolytes for Reagan?
That's... Notice how all he said is, I'm for lower taxes. And then it's like... I thought Infowars was supposed to be anti-establishment. You're supposed to want to watch the world burn, but there needs to be a government there taxing Wall Street and taxing everyone else and making sure we have unions. That's the craziness of it, where it's like, you better be anti-establishment. We're anti-establishment. We're anti-Wall Street. But we need a government to tax everyone, to keep a minimum wage, they're arguing for status quo things. They want even more status quo, and then are going to get mad at someone and be like, oh, well, you're for the establishment. You guys are fucking for the establishment. It's like, and all David Knight said was, I'm for lower taxes. And immediately, here we go.
Yeah, you guys are just normal Republicans. You're right-wing Republicans.
Infowars selling out.
So someone who says, I support lower taxes, you're selling out. You're normal Republicans. This is that educated mind at work. This is how education works, kids, where if you see something and then you then equate it to something. See, they were taught Republicans believe X, 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 X. Democrats believe whatever, and these special little snowflakes, well, they have their own party. It's the Tax Wall Street Party, so they can pick whatever they want. They can just say, well, I want a tax on this, I support a minimum wage, but because I'm not a Democrat or Republican, I came up with my own name, I'm the Special Snowflake Party, we're anti-establishment. See, we can say we're anti-establishment because we're the Special Snowflake Party, but we can still want status quo establishment things. It's just the Special Snowflake Party. And everyone else, the moment they say anything that anyone else slightly even agrees with, even if it's an extremely generalized statement, we're just going to label them, and we're going to chastise them, and we're going to point fingers, and we're going to call them sellouts, and shills, and Hitler, Nazis, bigots, fascists, homophobe, whatever, because we're the Special Snowflake Party. And that's, I mean, this is, and it's so funny because, like, you see social justice warriors do it. Yeah, I wouldn't think you would see, like, an old-haired, you know, gray-haired leprechaun like Webster Tarpley do it, but I guess it happens to the best of us.
It's very, okay, all right, thank you very much. Yeah, we're sellouts, okay. Okay, all right. Yeah, here we go. This is Donald Trump as a fascist.
I mean, at least you see David Knight can't even take it serious. Like, that's how warped it is.
You just heard Webster Tarpley. And of course, anybody that's listened to me knows that I'm not a Reagan fan. I think that there's many things that Reagan did wrong. Lowering the income tax was about the only thing he did right, but of course Webster doesn't like that. Webster says that we can't trust Donald Trump because he wants to raise tariffs perhaps as much as 45% when he would go 15%. So there you go. If he triples, he can't do anything right. And look, I'm not going to apologize.
Anyway, if you want to see the rest of it, you can check out the video. But that's what I was talking about. Like, they all kind of give this honest feedback. Well, I'm with this. I'm against that. You know, I'm not a fan of Reagan. I just like lower taxes. The leftists, they can't handle that. Because then you're actually being the sort of special snowflake. You're your own person. You're not in a party. You're not in a... They can't pigeonhole you into one of these groups and then continue to build straw men and attack them and build straw men and attack them and repeat, repeat, repeat. I mean, oh my God. When I saw this footage, I was just kind of appalled, and I, like, commented on it, and even people hit me up on the comments being like, he didn't play any word games, and I'm like, what are you talking about? That was like a fucking 9 minutes of Webster Tarpley playing a long-winded word game with himself half the time, and the blonde bitch behind him just vomiting out the mouth. Like, it was insanity, and it's like, I've said it before. If you're gonna attack Trump, like, attack him on something legitimate. Don't make yourself out to seem insane though in the process. Especially not when you're like a well-respected historian. Like, Webster Tarpley needs to see a doctor. He needs some Xanax, and I don't know. He needs to realize that reality is now, history is history. Live in the moment. And just because something seems like something doesn't mean it will be. I mean, this is you have that go on in relationships. You know, it's really bad if you're like, oh, well, you kind of remind me of my ex-girlfriend who cheated on me and broke my heart. You know, if you walk into a situation like that, it's not going to end very well, like, because you're automatically assuming it's going to go in this negative direction. That's what he's doing with his personal relationship with the government. He just is assuming it's always the worst, and only he could be the one with the special snowflake Wall Street party to fix it. So, hope everyone enjoyed my analysis of this shit, because this shit's fucking crazy.